All right, let's get started this morning. Good morning and welcome everyone to Technology Association of Oregon's next session of our Member Resiliency series with Nik Blosser, Chief of Staff for Oregon Governor Kate Brown. So if you haven't seen my face before, it's because I'm new to the organization. I'm Sally Bell. I'm the VP and Executive Director down here in Eugene of TAO in the Southern Willamette Valley, and pleased to be here with you all today. I'm just going to cover a few rules of engagement for the session this morning. It's 30 minutes. We want to get through many questions with Nik. All participants have been muted. Please remain on mute unless one of our staff members unmutes you and calls on you to speak. You may ask or respond to questions in the chat box publicly or privately by directing your messages to Justin Martinez. We will monitor the chat box and respond throughout the discussion. We ask that you engage via the participant icon on your screen. Please do engage with us on social media during this call and throughout the day. We appreciate your social support, and you can find us through various platforms here. Due to the limited time, we will capture all questions in the chat and then shift any unanswered ones to our Mobilize platform, which is where we host member engagement. Mobilize is TAO's member-only virtual community, and we will post unanswered questions from our members there to keep the conversation going after the event. If you have any questions about joining Mobilize, please reach out to Justin, whose email is on the screen. And if you have questions about joining TAO, please reach out to us. TAO staff support is provided by Justin this morning, who's happy to take feedback, questions, comments, or discuss sponsorship opportunities. Thank you so much, Justin. So a huge thank you to our sponsors, Portland State University and AT&T, for underwriting this session, and we appreciate their continued sponsorship and support. Thank you so much. So on to the main event this morning. It's my distinct honor to welcome our guest, Nik Blosser, who spent his career starting and running companies such as Celilo Group Media, which publishes the Chinook Book. And coincidentally, Nik took a chance on me 15 years ago, hired me into my first real job at Celilo Group. Time flies, right, Nik? Hired me in my first real job, and honestly, I thank him for being in the business world today. So thank you, Nik. Nik is Nik is currently the chairman of Sokol Blosser Winery. He co-founded and are chaired business advocacy groups that include the Oregon Business Association and Renew Oregon, in addition to his current position as Chief of Staff for the Office of the Governor for Oregon. So thank you so much, Nik. I'll turn it over to you. Nik, I think you're on mute. Do you want to unmute your mic, or are you still with us?
My screen froze for a second, Sally. So I apologize. I didn't hear the rest of it. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you okay. Things are looking good. Okay. Yep, all is well. Excellent. I can hear you now.
Yeah, it's the first day of school today, so all my kids are about to go online. I may need to move to a hotspot, but hopefully it'll all work fine.
Okay. Justin and I will be in touch in the back end if we need to support. But Kara suggested please suppress everyone's. If you're still on video, please turn it off, and that might help with our bandwidth. All right, well, let's launch into some of our question set here. So to start it off this morning, Nick, can you tell us some of the things the governor is focused on as we head into the fall as it relates to controlling the coronavirus?
Sure, and thanks to TAO, and great to see you, Sally. Thanks for everyone. Thanks to the sponsors. Pleased to be here. I know I was scheduled a month or two ago and had to cancel last minute. I apologize for that. It has been a completely crazy year. The main thing that really governor's office is focused on, obviously, is managing the pandemic as best as we can. I think we're fortunate in some respects because Oregon is one of the better performing states in terms of case counts. We have the lowest mortality rate, pretty low hospitalizations, and at the same time, we have a good portion of the economy still open. So that it doesn't feel like success, but compared to sort of where we could be, it feels, I think, pretty good. We're entering I guess the two things we're particularly focused on is, and everyone's sort of an armchair epidemiologist right now, so I'll use a little technical terms here, but the R naught value, basically the transmission value of how many cases each new case of COVID transmits. We're trying to get that number below 1 so that we can continue to decline. And what we're trying to get to is roughly 60 cases a day in Oregon, because that's the level where community spread is really reduced and we can feel comfortable opening schools statewide. And that's a really big focus of the governor. So we are declining our cases, but not as rapidly as we need to hit that level. I think the last analysis we had was at our current rate of decline, we wouldn't get there for another 100 or 200 days, and that's just a little too long. So we're trying to figure out what are, just the continued data analysis of where are new cases coming from and how to reduce that spread so that we can try to open schools in class schooling. So pandemic is a huge, all-encompassing focus. And I think there's also, with the weather nice and the ability to eat outdoors and congregate outdoors, that's been, supportive of that goal. The challenge will be in the fall as the rains start and people are forced to stay inside. What will that do to transmission? So we're concerned about that. Most immediately, we're concerned about Labor Day and people gather in social gatherings. A lot of the spread is coming from social gatherings, so we're concerned about that. And we're really focused on adding additional testing for the fall. So, and by the way, the trying to manage the support peaceful protests, but get rid of the violent and arsonists in Portland. We also are focused on that to a great extent as well. So, and I could keep going, but those are really the two main things.
Thanks, Nick. Switching to a different question here. You've earned a reputation as a thought leader in sustainability. As we come out of this crisis, what are some areas in clean tech, energy, et cetera, where you see opportunities for Oregon to strengthen its position as a leader in this space?
Thanks for the question. I sort of have two answers to that. I think we do need to build on the progress we've made. I think the governor's been very supportive and interested in, for example, mass timber and manufactured wood, advanced manufactured wood products for larger buildings. There's a great one going up right in inner Southeast Portland right now. And then obviously continuing to green the the entire energy system. We're pretty fortunate that we have two of the most, I would say, most enlightened investor-owned utilities in the country who really are leading the way on transitioning to clean energy. But I guess I'll say second, and this is probably first, is that we really need to, I think, approach how we're focusing on climate policy a little differently, I think, in the state, and we need to center frontline communities in that approach. I think we've had a pretty, we've focused on, for example, cap and trade at the legislature for the last couple sessions and have not been successful in that. And I think we need to take a little bit of a step back and talk to folks. I mean, the one thing this pandemic has just completely shown everybody is just how already existing disparities between vulnerable populations, particularly Black and brown folks, and that is equally the case in the impacts that climate change is having across the world. So I think from the governor's perspective, and she recently announced a blue ribbon panel that she's called the Racial Justice Council. There's an environmental justice committee on that. It will have its first meeting over the next month. And I think if folks are interested, I would encourage you to follow that and get involved, because I think we're going to need to do things a little bit differently.
Thank you for that. Next question. Do you see an opportunity for ongoing collaboration at a regional level across Washington, Oregon, and California beyond the immediate need of responding to COVID-19 crisis? And what areas might those be?
Yeah, I think one of the very few positive things that's happened, I think, in the last 6 months is much stronger relationships across both the governors and the administrations in Western states. And I'm talking to my counterparts in other states much more frequently, including Idaho and Washington, Republican and Democrat. And I think it really, we already had for example, we have good relationships when it comes to supporting each other with forest fires, and we're doing forest firefighting. We're doing that now, particularly with California. But I do think there's real opportunity. We're talking with the region about testing initiatives that involve technology. I think we're talking regionally about, Apple and Google have something called exposure notification to help with contact tracing, where clearly that needs to work at a regional level, because if someone is a positive test and lives in Vancouver but works in Portland, it has to work across state lines. So we're working together on making sure that anything we do along those lines is across the state line. So yeah, I think there's a lot of opportunity. It's also it's complicated enough to move the bureaucracy in Oregon, and I think trying to coordinate across states also is just complicated.
Yeah. Okay, next question. At TAO, we've been organizing a series of successful design sprints where we leverage the power of resources of the tech community to solve community-based challenges. So far, these have included work with communities of color and also with the state's ag community. We'd love to do something with the state of Oregon as we head into 2021. Would you be interested in some sort of design sprint with us? And if so, what would some challenges look like that you might want to propose?
Yeah, I think there's a real opportunity here. I think it's just trying to figure out what it is. I've spent, as some of you know, and in previous conversations I've had with TAO, I've talked about IT at the state, and we just have such a huge technical debt I've spent quite a bit of time, and the legislature thankfully has funded some efforts to really modernize some of the major systems that we have. And we had two major implementations over the past 6 months, one at the Department of Motor Vehicles and one at Department of Human Services, that I think transitioned us from just very old systems to much more modern systems. So I think that's been our primary focus. At the same time, there is need for things that design sprints could really help with. I think just one little example I remember thinking of we were talking about a year ago, was just the onboarding of new foster parents and how to kind of use just very basic things that you use as onboarding a new customer all the time, and kind of using that in the foster care system in terms of tracking training and all of that. There's examples like that throughout state government, and I think my challenge is really how to create an environment where the state can take advantage of your offer. And it's not something that we're really, I would say, set up to do in a way that would really be able to take advantage of it. So we have a great CIO at the state, Terrence Woods, and I'm going to talk to him about this and get back to you, because I think we need to figure out a way to be able to take advantage of some of the private sector entrepreneurship that we could use a little more injection of at the state level.
Thanks for that. Yeah, we'd love to partner with you. Okay, next question. Can Can you tell us about the Futures Commission and share a little bit more about that endeavor and the goal of updating the state's 10-year innovation plan?
Yeah, I think there's been a lot of interest, and this is, as some of you know, something I've been passionate about for many years, and the governor is very interested. The timing is tricky, of course, but I think also it's an interesting opportunity to really take a look at what do the next 10 years look like. I mean, we have got some amazing strengths, particularly in semiconductors and with Intel here, but we need to look. We need to be more intentional about what the opportunities are in the future, and we just haven't had a state focus on figuring that out. And also then figuring out what are the academic supports and research supports, what are the state incentives that we might need to attract those kind of businesses. So it's really a panel that's looking to come up with that plan. And, I'm really excited about it. I think Skip said they had their first meeting recently. So I'm excited. We're excited to hear what they come up with.
Great, thank you. Now we're going to move on to some pre-submitted audience questions, of which there were like over 20. So we'll try to get to as many of them as I can, and I've condensed a few. So the first one's about budget. What is the likely impact on the state budget, both taxes and services, of the economic depression from COVID-19 social distancing? So impacts from social distancing, and then how do you think the state will go about achieving a balanced budget?
So the impacts from social distancing specifically. I mean, I think so the next state revenue forecast where the state will issue their analysis is in a couple weeks. I think it's September 23rd, let's say. I actually talked to him a little bit yesterday. What's interesting, and what I think the economists are saying, is retail therapy, just sales generally and broadly, are now back to normal. I think that's obviously not the case in every single business, but overall retail sales are very strong. And peculiarly, manufacturing and trade sales are also very strong. So the sectors that are most challenged right now are hospitality, service sector, which also tends to have the lowest paid employees. And I think also back to the sort of point I made earlier about how we really need to rethink how we're approaching services and opportunities for vulnerable populations. But just in terms of actual impact, we'll know more in 3 weeks. We haven't had a revenue forecast since back in May. So I don't know that I have a specific answer to it. We know we're going to have less revenue at the state, and we know we're going to have to figure out how to manage through that. And that's why we and other states have been focused on trying to have some support from the federal government for state and local governments, but we have not been successful with that. So it's hard for me to put a number on it yet. But I think the last thing I'll say is the governor's worked very hard to try to find that line between keeping commerce and businesses going and open, while at the same time, using public health protocols to reduce the spread. And I think we found pretty good balance, as good a balance as we probably can in, for example, restaurants and bars, and being able to allow some amount of inside dining. And we just have not seen huge transmission of the virus in restaurants among patrons. So that's been good.
Thank you. So next question is a little bit more about Portland and downtown. And this is a pre-submitted question here. It's a little bit longer, so give me just a minute. Many Portland-based employees are expressing serious concerns about returning to work in the downtown area once COVID restrictions are lifted. People are seriously concerned about their safety in the downtown area. What is being done to make it safe again to work, walk, shop, commute, etc. in downtown? There are likely many employers with offices in downtown Portland that are currently researching other options, such as larger remote workforce, moving the offices to the suburbs, moving the offices out of Oregon, etc. What are your thoughts on what's being done to make it safe?
Yeah, I've been corresponding with some of my friends in the downtown business community, and it's a huge challenge. I think, the Portland Police Bureau has the largest law enforcement force in the state, and the state police has actually a smaller force. But as you probably are aware, the governor has authorized use of the state police to try to help, again, find that balance between supporting and allowing peaceful protests while at the same time arresting the folks that are really causing the violence and starting fires. And I think the other thing we've been really focused on lately is making sure everyone understands that when those folks are arrested, they will be arraigned, they will be prosecuted. A condition, if they are released, a condition of their release must be that they can't go participate in riots in the future. And so I think there's just a lot of the nuance around how the prosecution side that we're leaning into to make sure that that is handled correctly. And I could go into more detail about that, but there's just some sort of basic practices that need to be followed. While at the same time, I think we need to be the peaceful protests have been going on this long for a reason, which is there's significant change that does need to happen. And I think the governor's concern is that there's not been a process by which significant concerns of particularly Black protest leaders can really be heard and addressed in the city of Portland. And I think I would ask the downtown business leaders to focus as much on that and how we can work on that as on just stopping the protests. There's no simple answer, but we're all going to have to work together on both of those things. It's not either or.
Yeah. Switching gears a little bit to another question, Nick. This is about broadband as remote learning and remote work is our new normal. Thoughts on closing the broadband gap between metro and rural communities across the state?
Well, I think it's actually been a big focus. The legislature and the governor allocated some significant coronavirus relief fund dollars to broadband. And there is a broadband strategy. The state is actually taking a lead with major academic institutions on dedicated fiber to go around the state that public institutions, including schools, can use. So I think it's a big focus. And I'm not completely up to speed on all the details of things we're doing, but it's been a big focus.
Thanks for that. How can we help Oregon be a leader committed to equity and opportunity for all?
Well, I really do want to highlight the Racial Justice Council that the governor has launched. So let me spend a minute on that. I think a lot of other states have created kind of blue ribbon panels of business leaders and folks to talk about recovery after the pandemic. And I think we thought about it a little bit differently, and the governor decided that her kind of very central blue ribbon panel was going to be focused on centering racial justice in everything we do. And I think that's pandemic focused, and it's beyond. And like I said at the beginning, the pandemic has really brought to the surface these disparities that have existed for a very long time and have only gotten worse with the pandemic. So there are committees of the Racial Justice Council focused on not just environmental equity, but criminal justice and health equity, and I'm going to forget all the rest of them. Economic opportunity is a big one. And I think it will be the biggest, most central thing that will guide the governor's policy and budget priorities going into the rest of her 2.5 years at leading the state. So I would encourage members of TAO and folks listening to this call to, as soon as we have our first meeting there, one of the big efforts is to be able to have on an online system where all the documents and meeting notices and minutes and everything will be posted, and we would love to get participation from the tech community in that.
Thank you. We'd love to participate. We've got about 5 minutes left, but this one is, I know it's important to folks down here in Eugene, and this is about college sports. What is the current thinking on reopening college sports?
College sports. I'm a huge college sports fan. And the college sports is complex in part because of who's actually in charge of making the decision. And, just taking football for the fall, that was a Pac-12 president's decision. I think we have been trying, we have made, the Oregon Health Authority with the governor's support has made guidelines to allow for practice and play without fans for professional sports. And I think the challenge in Oregon, and I think the challenge will be what can work at the college level. But, governor's a huge fan. She was devastated when the U of O, when the Ducks women didn't get to play in their championship. And I think if there's a way, we'll find it. But we also are listening to all the athletes saying we want to be safe. We don't want to be, we don't want to lose our scholarship if we don't play, and we need to make sure that is also supported as well. So no easy answer on that one, other than we all miss sports.
We do. We really do. Okay, I think I can still sneak in a few more. Is the state of Oregon looking at ways to make Oregon and Portland Metro a more attractive option for companies to open or continue to have offices here? And also connected to that, what's the governor's office support surrounding job seekers in that equation?
Yeah, I guess I don't know what the foundation of that question is in terms of making it more attractive. I mean, in the past, that question's been asked from a tax perspective.
Yeah,
and I think
that was the basis for this one. It's from a financial and tax perspective.
So I think from a state tax perspective, Oregon's like bottom 10 in business taxes. I mean, I think people, I don't know, they don't really, I don't know if you look at the comparisons, we've got like the lowest workers' comp rates in the country. We've got 10th lowest business taxes. It's probably up to 16th. I think it's now 16th with the new CAT, the tax for, but I think, so the addition that we don't track is the local taxes. And I know there's some more, recent things in the city and metro. So I couldn't really comment on that. But from a state level, we're very conscious of the tax burden, and it's really quite low, particularly relative to our neighbors for business. And that's not just me saying it, that's, Ernst & Young and the other folks that compare all the states. So I think that, in particular individual industries, it can be different, but just broadly speaking, we have a very competitive tax system.
Thanks for that. We've got 1 minute left. I want to end on a high note here. And then for those folks who submitted questions, we will publish them on Mobilize. We're going to follow up with Nik's office to see if we can get other feedback. And so we'll follow up on all the questions submitted. So thank you to everyone. So final question, Nik, what is giving you hope and inspiration right now?
Oh, goodness. I'll just say my job lately, it's been really hard to pause and reflect on things. You're just sort of going from crisis to crisis. I think I am hopeful in the sense, one of the main things is we have done, with people wearing masks and following the physical distancing guidelines that we put out, we have really stopped the spread. That really does give me hope that we actually know how to do it now. It doesn't require shutting the whole economy down like the world did back in March. And that gives me some hope. I think, for those of you with kids at home, I think there's probably days like I have where your kids are more resilient than you are, and at times that they're really struggling. And so that for me goes both ways. Is I get inspiration from them and their ability to be creative in the current environment and talk to their friends over Zoom or go to the park and be physically distanced. Things that we never had to do. At the same time, I'm just really clear, that behavioral health issues are up significantly, and we have to figure out how to support folks through that. So It's hard for me to be all positive, Sally, but hopefully I got some good things.
No. That's it. Yeah. So appreciative of your time, Nick. We just rolled over to just past 9. So I'm sure you've got to run to a 9 o'clock. We're so grateful for your time this morning. Thanks for making that a priority for us this morning. What a great group. And we look forward to more in the future.
It's great to see you, Sally. Take care.
Thanks, Nick. Thanks,
Bye-bye.
everybody.